got asked to step down from a position. Years ago, I taught Sunday school on a voluntary basis at a megachurch in my town. There were so many children in this church that classrooms were made available to group children with Sunday school teachers for every year of their life until middle school and high school, at which point they attended a larger group with similarly aged peers in separate wings of the building. I taught 2-year-olds, and loved every moment of it. My classroom boasted a huge number of children, at about 20 to 25 per service. I was supposed to have an adult co-teacher, but all the other adult volunteers were sent to other classrooms with a higher need. I had 2 high school-aged volunteers, best friends, who often spent service time playing together, despite repeated approaches to asking them to play with the children. One of my volunteers was the director's son, who I couldn't replace because of his mother, and who clearly did not want to be volunteering. Despite this, and despite inheriting a huge classroom full of several special needs children, my children played calmly throughout service, and enjoyed a routine and simple rule I set to run the classroom efficiently. Children arrived, played calmly, sang songs, ate snack, and went home. Even in the face of this obvious evidence that my classroom was running efficiently, I was repeatedly asked by church leaders to adopt certain mannerisms around children I found inauthentic and frankly patronizing. I don't and won't speak in a high-pitched voice to anyone, child or adult. I don't and won't use words like upsy-daisy. These requests were persistent. It was the opinion of the church that I was not warm and welcoming enough. It was modeled again and again that the church would prefer I was over-animated in a huge smile hug I'm so glad you're here kind of greeting. One summer day we were all called, some 50+ room leaders and volunteers, into a mandatory meeting. You know those meetings where you instantly know they're talking about you? The policies on words like upsy-daisy were now set in writing, and I was shortly asked to step down for not using these phrases. I was not allowed to prepare my children for the transition to a new Sunday teacher. I was immediately replaced, by a friend, actually, and was fairly crushed about the sudden break from little people I liked spending time with. And furthermore, it made me question my abilities to work with children, an endeavor I had already devoted my life to. Unbeknownst to my church, I had long been working at a career in early childhood intervention, teaching a classroom full of 2-year-old child victims of trauma and abuse with a heavy caseload of special needs children. My co-worker called me over one Monday, as I was the twos teacher, asking what I made of this email she had just received concerning a church with an out-of-control twos room requesting that someone come consult with their new staff and help implement some new classroom techniques to manage difficult behaviors. Naturally, I agreed to do the consult in person as soon as possible, and asked my co-worker to let them know I would meet with them on a completely voluntary basis at their next Sunday service. It was absolutely my pleasure to greet my church leaders and friend as their specialist consultant. To their confused surprise, I walked them through all sorts of interventions and strategies I had previously used to create a calm classroom environment, and strongly advised against the use of overly excited greetings and phrases like upsy-daisy in place of direct redirective requests. For example, please put your feet back on the floor. It was my strong written recommendation that the written policies on these strategies be amended and for staff to be immediately retrained in accordance with actual therapeutic practices. It was my last time stepping foot in that church, and will forever remain my most deliciously cherished memories of vindication. Now to the comments. Love this. Children know when you're talking down to them. Funny that the church leaders didn't. OP replied. One of the 2 leaders of the childcare division was a retired teacher for a very young age group. She talked to me in a sing-song voice all the time and it really drove me nuts. For some people, that's how they relate to everyone. Her folly was in not valuing how different people relate differently to both kids and adults. I had never criticized other youth leaders for doing things differently than myself. I think a variety of communication styles often makes an organization stronger. And it's important to remember that everyone has a huge commonality in loving kids and wanting nothing but happiness for them. That thought has helped me through a lot of what would have been clashes in teaching styles with fellow interventionists and providers. On an absolutely evil note, it did feel really good to see her frown all through the consult, though. Should have asked her to leave if she couldn't be warm and welcoming during your consultation. Good on you. Your story is very satisfying. I teach elementary school music and all of my fellow teachers and I speak to our students with a professional tone. I'm the only teacher without a credential, and was never told to teach this way, but it just seems natural. Kids know when you're patronizing them. I realize your kids were even younger, but to anyone who had to work with kids, expect them to behave like they're a couple years older than they are, and they will. Something about expecting a person to be responsible for his or herself makes them strive to be that way. Isn't talking to babies in a baby voice actually bad for them? Opie replied. In short, yes. As a provider, it also feels draining and I hate doing it. Thank you both for your fast replies. Now I have all the knowledge. Mwahaha. Good on you. Silly sods, I suppose it's not surprising that people who didn't work with the children would not understand how it was actually going. Another example of bad managers thinking they know how to do their employees' jobs better than they do. In this case volunteers, but same idea. I know exactly what you mean, mate. Managers can be some right wankers. Thank you. As a child I abhorred and looked down on any adult that spoke to me as if I was an infant. Every single time an adult spoke to me like that I felt shitty and less than what I was. I really dislike other adults doing that shit to any child over the age of 1 or 2, and I refuse to do that shit to children. We've never done that with our child even. I was always much more open and honest with adults that spoke normally to me. I always felt like I needed to hide something from adults that spoke to me like I was an infant because they were clearly lying and trying to manipulate me with their altered voice. Opie replied. I woke up today ready to respect the duck out of some tiny people. I wake up every day ready to lay the respect down. Hello, I have a question, if you don't mind answering. A couple whom and I are good friends with have a baby and she just turned 1. I tend to use a falsetto voice when I speak to her, but not really trying to be sing-songy. I just have a very deep gruff voice and feel this would be more accepted by the child. She adores me. Every time we see her she tries to crawl/walk away from her parents to get to me lol. At what point do I stop with the voice? This isn't /malicious-compliance, this is /r/justice-porn/ /r/justice served is the new replacement sub for that type of thing. Less sketchy name, too, when browsing at work. I'm sure it's hilarious to the creators, but having to browse to justice porn or earth porn or people porn and other parts of the porn network to see pretty images is kind of a shitty thing. I literally applauded. I remember being a child, and I sure as hell didn't respect adults who spoke like children. And as an adult, I'm viscerally disgusted by the idea of mandatory baby talk. When I was about 4, apparently, I made a great-aunt mad at me for calling her out on talking down to my younger cousin and for referring to herself in the third person. Granted, I didn't use the term third person but got the concept. My mom was proud I stood up to my aunt for being the saccharine phony that she was. I remember liking adults who were really friendly and playful, even if they were overly sweet baby talkers. However, depending on the circumstance, this could give rise to a few issues. Sometimes I remember thinking that the adult talked this way and seemed playful, so they must want to play with us. Better not settle down then, This is time to play. Sometimes it seemed like they didn't really mean what they were saying, so hey, it doesn't matter if you disobey them. Maybe it would be fun to do the exact opposite. No worries, they're not mad or serious about it anyway.